In this video, we're going to talk about some very basic math that we can do with variables. Now, a lot of you might not be into math at all, and if that's the case, don't worry about that. This is not going to be math heavy, anything like that. I just want to show you how you can modify variables and change what's inside them, as well as you can display different things on your output of debug messages based on some math operations. So let's go back into our first script, and we have our variables still in here. But what if we wanted to do something like a sum of multiple numbers? So to demonstrate that, I'm just going to create a few more integer variables here. I'm going to make one number 1, and let's just make this 10. I'll make another one, number 2. I'll make this, say, 12. Then make one more, number 3, and we'll equal 35. Okay, so we have these three numbers, and then if we wanted to add them up and get the sum of them all, we can make another variable here just called sum. So now if I wanted to get that sum, I need to make that equal all of those three variables. So I can do that in start or update. Remember, we talked about the difference. So something like this, if we're not changing the numbers every frame of our game, we just want to do stuff in start, so it only happens once. So if I was to put this in update, it would do that calculation every frame when there's no value to that. We're not going to get a different number. So let's go to the front of our start here, and I'm going to do sum equals, and remember, this isn't actually equals, it's assigning something into sum. So what do we want to assign into sum? We want to do number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3. And then our semicolon at the end. So now sum is the total of these three numbers, and we can easily verify that by doing a debug message again. And something like this, I would recommend trying to practice this, like doing a debug where you display out sum. Try some of that stuff before I actually do it here, and just play around with some of this. You know, create a few extra variables, debug out some messages. If you do a debug and you start getting an error because something's wrong, you know what, just clear that line and try it again. The only way to get better and more comfortable with variables and doing debug messages and how things work is to practice. So I do recommend, instead of just constantly following exactly what I do in the course, you know, play around a bit, try some things. There is some stuff that we're going to get into that you will have to follow more closely. But something like this, when we just have a little practice script, like this first script, you know what, play around in it. The worst that happens is if you break this script, you know, we just delete it and we create a new one. It's not that complex, and you could just go back one video and recreate it. Learning by doing is the best way that I recommend. I encourage that, and I'm going to try to give you a lot of little assignments to do on your own. So for this one, I don't actually need these double quotes because I'm going to output the variable. So I'm not typing sum like this, because if I did this, it's going to debug the word sum into the console. I want the actual sum variable, so I don't want those strings. So now see, the autocomplete picks up sum. If I hit enter, it's going to output the sum. So if I go back to Unity and run this, we're going to run into the problem I mentioned earlier, though. We don't have any context for what this is. So if I go to console, so there it is, 57. But we do want to go back and let's put a string in front of it. And I'll do sum colon and then plus sum. Okay, so if I go and run this, now we get sum and 57. So it's a lot more clear. Now, one thing I want to show as well in debug, we don't have to stop here. We don't have to do all of these on separate lines if we don't want to. So in here, I could do another plus, and then I could do another string here in quotes. So I could add age right onto this one, and then do plus my age. So now it's going to output these on the same line. See, so there we have, we don't have much for spacing on there. It's not formatted nicely, but we can add multiple different variables on one line. So now we've done sum. Any normal math operation can be done just like in normal math. So I'm not going to cover math because that's something you can look up on your own, and a lot of people just automatically know it from grade school. But any of the normal order of operations is the exact same. So if I wanted, instead of doing a plus, so I could do a /, which is the divide symbol on computers. So it would divide these two numbers and then add number 3 to it. So the /, which is over on your number pad, is the divide symbol. For multiplication, it's the asterisk, which is right next to it, or Shift 8 on your keyboard for the star. So that's going to do multiplication. Okay. And just like in normal math, so if I did number 3 plus number 2 at the end, if I wanted these to be done first, I can just put them inside of brackets. So this works just like your normal math. Okay, so that's the very basics of using math with variables, and I will see you in the next video.